Welcome to Flourishing Unfiltered, the podcast for high achievers who seek a professional life that feels as good as it looks.
We talk about the unseen journey of struggles on the path to success that people rarely talk about.
I'm Kieran Smith, positive psychology and leadership coach and consultant.
And I'm Dr. Michael Neuhaus, positive psychology and self-leadership speaker and consultant.
Before we begin today, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're recording. We pay our deepest respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
As we share our stories today, we honour the rich tradition of storytelling that has been passed down through generations.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Future of Flourishing, a futures thinking media, training and venture lab dedicated to bridging the gap between scientific knowledge and practical application in the field of human flourishing.
The Future of Flourishing is committed to creating a comprehensive ecosystem of communication and innovation platforms. Find out more about the Future of Flourishing at futureofflourishing.com.
If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a review. It would mean the world to us. Okay, today we are stoked to be joined by Dan Hardie. Dan is an adolescents counsellor and founder of MyStrengths Australia. After 7 years as a teacher, Dan studied counselling with a major in positive psychology. With 14 years experience in private practice, Dan has become one of the leading experts in strength-based therapy with adolescents. He's authored 4 books and developed one of the fastest growing wellbeing programs in Australia. Recently, MyStrengths celebrated an epic milestone, having led 100,000 students through the MyStrengths process to discover and nurture their unique strengths. Dan is married to Jules and raises 3 energetic boys, 1 lizard and a snappy turtle. Dan, we first connected through our studies at Melbourne University, where I first learned about your incredible work in the MyStrengths program, and then come to know you for your incredibly warm personality, which I'd say is really driven by your desire to learn a lot more about others. Today, though, we're really fortunate to learn about your journey. So I'd love for you to first tell us a little bit, and for our listeners to hear a little bit about MyStrengths, what it is, and what inspired you to start the business.
Yeah, it's a funny question because... hello, by the way. We started MyStrengths almost accidentally. I was working as an adolescent counsellor with teenagers, and I got to a place where I became really frustrated with the work I was doing and felt like that I was almost contributing to a problem that I was seeing. So after 4 or 5 years, we constantly work with young people on anxiety or their behaviour challenges or the presenting issues at school or school refusal. And there's so many other layers to why parents would bring their child to come and see me. And after a number of years, I thought I was doing the right thing by saying, okay, we're going to spend time talking about the anxiety and how we can recover and, bring about strategies and techniques and tools that would help them, move into a better place. And there was this one day when a young girl, she said to me, "Oh, Dan, I went to school today and I couldn't do the test." And I said, "How come you couldn't do the test?" "Well, I just told Miss, I'm feeling too anxious. I'm too, scared." And Miss said, "Who told you that you have anxiety or whatever?" And she says, "Well, I spend all this time with a therapist, and every week we talk about my anxiety, and it's just I can't think of anything else. It's just there." And I'm looking at this girl and thinking, you actually are so talented, gifted, and beautiful in so many other areas of your life. You have a part-time job where you're super responsible and reliable. You've got all of this amazing talent and skill where they've just given you the keys for lockup and you're only 16 years old. And she, plays, OzTag, and she's got this, footy team, and she's the captain of the team. She's got these leadership skills, and she's got so many other areas of her life where she flourishes, where she thrives and does amazing work. But she couldn't see it. All she could see was the deficit, was this giant big thing that became the defining factor in her identity and everything she understood. And I thought, I'm playing into this. All we ever do is talk about their deficit, their disorder, what's wrong. And here I am supposed to be trying to help them build a framework and a foundation for what's right and how they can grow and overcome and things. And I just became really frustrated with the work I was doing. And it really changed and pivoted when I decided that what if we could help young people discover what their strengths are? We could spend some conversation time talking about where they flourish and where they perform at their best and where their mind is open and they're in flow and they end up in spaces where they can really be themselves and feel proud of themselves. And it really changed the therapy I was doing with young people. And I've got so much more to sort of say on that, but yeah, in the end, I started doing this one-to-one with my clients, and a local school had 7 or 8 of their year 9 boys that I was working with, and those year 9 boys were coming back with reports and cards about their strengths, and they were working with me about, and they were changed and they were different, and they had different language, different understanding. There's someone saying, I'm practical, miss, and I'm a kinesthetic learner, or someone saying, I'm super loyal, miss, in my friendships, or no, I'm even tempered, and or they've got that competitive winner trait in them, and this head teacher was saying, wow, this is really cool. I wonder if we could get this for other students. And so she called me, and I went and met the school. And it was the very first time. My wife and I had done a bit of work in schools, and as you heard earlier, I'd been a teacher and I love to present. I've been speaking in lots of different spaces, and I said, hey, why don't we run it for the whole year group? We'll run focus groups, we'll do this and that, we'll help every child, regardless of their status, the socioeconomic demographic, or whatever. They can discover what their strengths are. And that was the first time we went into schools, and it kind of just flowed from there. It was an amazing session. Something happened there that was even better. I thought the gold standard was come in, sit with Dan on the couch, right? We're going to unpack, we're going to discover, we're going to do all of this, right? But something happened when they were in a group of peers where they went around the circle talking about, oh yeah, he definitely does that. When we're playing footy, he pushes us further and he encourages us, and that's his coaching strength. Or, oh yeah, we're seeing this guy, he might be always in trouble, but he's got the gift of the gab and always talking and, communicating and doing all this. And it just started us, working in schools more and more. And I got this kind of picture and vision. What if we could actually, instead of wealthy families who could pay $130 to Dan to come into private counselling, what if we could empower every teenager to discover what their strengths are, to learn to love themselves, get an idea on their value, their worth, their natural talents and abilities, and we can affirm that, call that out, and help coach them in that. So that's what we just started to do. And somehow, I don't know how, 100,000 kids have been through it in the last 5 years. So it's been amazing.
That is amazing. What a beautiful story, Dan. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's incredible. I feel like when you started talking about this, I just had to think where focus goes, energy flows, isn't it? Like you focus on the disease, and that's all you concern yourself with. You don't even know who you are outside of that. And that is not to say that counselling is, redundant or anything like that. Of course not. We need both. But I often say, and I know you're very passionate about positive psychology, and I often say, well, we work in that space of mental health, the other half of mental health that is always forgotten about, the health part of it. How often do we talk about mental health and it's just all about illness, and that's all we know? Our health system is a disease system, really, isn't it? Or our healthcare system, because
100%.
Yeah, all we do is diagnose and treat illnesses and so forth. So absolutely inspiring journey. So, okay, I understand what inspired you and where the need came from. Can you tell me a little bit then about how you, started developing this business? Because ultimately, obviously, we're also interested in where you started maybe to struggle, if there were any struggles along the way. But so how did you go about building your business?
I think business is best, developed with a vision, like a clear picture of what, they say, start with the end in mind. Yeah. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in 3 or 5 years? Or and actually, I kind of did it the reverse way. And so I don't recommend this. But it was like, well, we just followed our nose, kind of went, so it was interesting even feeling out in this first days, schools, we would talk to schools about running this with year 10, and then another school said, could you do this with year 7? And so suddenly we're just testing the waters and saying, where's their traction? And we just started to inch by inch figure out what's our niche, where do we do our best work? And I think all businesses are really trying to work out, what is my niche? What are we experts in that is better than anyone else out there? And we found that our niche was certainly working at that 16-year-old level, like right at that pivotal moment. Identity formation was huge. We often did a piece of research that shows that at 16, teenagers are working out 3 big questions. Who am I? Do I like myself? And will I be okay in my future? And those 3 questions, they sit down so deep inside of a young person that what tools are we giving them to resolve those big questions they're asking? How do we help them figure out that who am I question and am I okay? And so much of it, we have this bravado on the outside, and I've got to really, and I remember being a teenager at 15 or 16 because I was an extrovert. It looked like Dan's really confident, but no, underneath I had so much self-doubt. I would go home overthinking, oh, did I say too much? And I was trying to be funny there, but they were laughing at me and not with me, and there was all these kind of questions, and and so for us, really trying to work out how do we understand our audience and the people we're trying to serve and help and work with clarity, and to really resolve and get clear on what the problem is and how we resolve that problem. And so in answer to your question, we just started working inch by inch, and then came up with a bit of a vision that we didn't want only wealthy kids or only elite schools or whatever to have the opportunity for teenagers to discover their strengths. So our strategy has been a lot around that fairness component, around that equity. We want others in Tamworth and in Kingscliff and down in like out in Western Sydney and a whole bunch of other areas that they need these opportunities as well, because the young people have so much need, and we can help build frameworks for them. And it's been amazing, just that having clarity on that we want to serve a broad like school audience at least. And you know what? Some of the hardest things have been working out what we say no to. Later on we'll probably talk about, where can people, get in touch with you guys or whatever. And we haven't had a strong social strategy. Why? Because we've been really focused on serving schools, and our customer is the school and that whole community. And suddenly we've got this work where, we're working with over 150 high schools in our state. And we, have served over 100,000 teenagers with almost zero social strategy. We had to say no to that. It would have been like really tempting. I was tempted so many times. And we've got a little bit, we've got 800 or 900 people that follow along with MyStrengths or whatever. And heaps of times, almost for ego, I wanted to be like, I want to put messaging out there. I want to tell people how we're doing awesome and blah, blah, blah. But let's focus on exactly what we're doing and what we're doing well. Focus on the customer, and really narrowing in on that. So I don't know, that's been part of our journey. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it's incredible. It sounds like you've taken New South Wales, by storm. Any plans to go Australia-wide, or are you limited to New South Wales borders, or?
We're definitely not. The vision, and we say it a lot, is that our dream is that every teenager in Australia gets the opportunity to discover their strengths. My heart breaks that there's kids out there who can go through life and never get clarity on that, never know that they were born with uniqueness, that they have things in their personality that's gorgeous and beautiful, and that that we just need to expand their language and their understanding of who they are and how they operate in the world. And maybe they're not the smartest. And I love that we filmed this this young one. She was 17 years old, and she said, Dan, I'm not the smartest, in fact, I really struggle with my academics, but I'm super creative, and I've got my own recording studio at my house, and I play guitar, and I do this, and this. And she's just started expanding this world of talent that she had, and she was so proud to be her. And she held up these, strength cards, and she says, this is what I'm proud of. I've got these strengths, and I wish my mum knew it. And I was like, wow, we want to help a society of people recognize that our strengths are broad and that there's so many different elements to our lives. Exactly what, we focus so much on the deficit and on, mental ill health, but rarely do we go, whoa, but look where she's performing there. Or look at that area of flourishing, thriving, and and this happens for adults as well.
Yeah, and I know, Karen, you probably also have a million questions, but on top of all that, also as a society, we place value upon different parts, right? Like we value academic achievements way higher than creative achievements, for example, right? That does my head in. And I just love that you are facilitating a means to empower young people and appreciate all parts of themselves, or whatever parts, seem to be more prominent within themselves, and therefore fight back a little bit on those societal norms around what's valuable and what's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I do have a million questions. That's a good point out there, call out there, Micah. Most definitely do. But Dan, I want to firstly just acknowledge, I think, and credit to you and your team for not going, too big too quickly. There's been a lot of focus on obviously getting, the core work that you do right. And I think that, the fact that you haven't had to have a real strong social strategy, marketing strategy speaks volumes to that. Not only in the sense that you found a niche in the market that is, there's a heavy calling for it, but, and that love of wanting to democratize this space so that everybody has access to it is very admirable as well. And I love that. And I just want to go a little bit further back in the conversation. There was a point that I really was quite interested in. You were talking about, those early stages of starting a business. There was a lot of self-doubt. You were going home and questioning the work that you were doing. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit around like the strategies or like the coping strategies or support systems that you had in place to help navigate those times? Because I think for a lot of our listeners that could be an early stage hurdle that they need to get over.
Yeah, one of the hard things about starting a business is we still have, like I was raising a young family and still have bills to pay every single week. The rent or the mortgage or whatever is there relentlessly. And so in the early days of anyone, if there's entrepreneurs or whatever that are starting a business and having a vision and wanting to make a difference or whatever, wanting to serve people, wanting to help, how do I pay my bills and yet develop content? And, we wrote the MyStrengths assessment and ran focus groups and we're working with hundreds of people, but achieving no income at the time we were doing that, and it's like, man, this, is there gonna be a time when it starts to make financial sense, when we start to make money out of this? And I remember so many times going home going, Jules, I'm exhausted. Like, I just, I got a day job. And actually, I took a lot of encouragement. She was reading a book at the time from Dan France. He's one of the Queer Eye guys. I don't know if you know Queer Eye, but she was reading his book really. And she said, Dan, you got to read this. And she showed me a single page. This guy is like so famous and a multimillionaire and has amazing businesses and amazing, things happening. And he wrote in his book that for the first 6 years of him starting his business, he would go do his day job and then work till midnight on his own business. And I was like, I felt so much comfort that I wasn't alone in spending my nights and exhausting myself on, we've got a vision, we want to try and reach more and we want to try and help more, but it doesn't pay me a salary yet. And, how are we supposed to do that with the team? And we're trying to develop beautiful resources and, well, I like things to be gorgeous and shiny. I want kids to take things home like this, their strengths pack to go, but then there's an investment in design, an investment in product, all of these sort of things. And I'm like, wow, like it's constantly chasing, hoping that it will make sense at some point in the future. And I think a lot of people in young businesses, small business, have those first few years of when do I turn a profit? When do we actually get employed and be able to get paid to do the work that we do? And so, yeah, certainly having people encourage me and say, no, we're doing good things. Stick at it, mate, And I'm big on building a team. And so we've got an amazing team, but I felt like we were in this together. There was a bunch of people. We all believed in the concept. And I took a lot of actual, gained a lot of hope, encouragement from the schools we were serving. We've never seen them just as a customer, but they're our partner in this. There's so many who are passionate about positive wellbeing, positive education in schools, looking for tools and partners who could help them and work with them. And now we develop staff training for how teachers in schools can be strength-based teachers and be calling out the strengths of their students and be working on that. And, working with them, I'm like, I didn't feel alone. We were trying to do this by ourselves. There's lots of people like you guys, who say, this is going to benefit society if we can look at how we help people flourish, if we can help people focus on what's right instead of what's wrong and change that script up. And I think that, finding your tribe, finding those people who are going to build encouragement. I wanted to be an encouraging voice and see that even if this was a 3-year thing and nothing else happened, man, we encouraged a heck of a lot of people. We boosted them. And I just kept on looking at the people, their faces when they discovered strengths in that. And yeah, that's part of how I got through the tough times. I tell you, Kieran, I don't know if this is coming, but through COVID, like for you guys, was COVID like, did it kill everything that you were trying to do, and the things that you were passionate about and driving forward? Like, was that
For me personally, no, it wasn't. But we were over in France, and we were sort of living a different life model at the time anyway. And then we kind of used it as a way to transition back to Australia then for a couple of years. So yeah, my story was very different, very unique, I guess. And I actually took it as an opportunity to start my own business during that time, but and travel with my kids. But yeah, I think we weren't very very representative of many people at the time, just because we were already living very differently and overseas. Yeah. How about you, Karen?
I think you might have been maybe one of the few people globally that was looking to come to Australia during that time. with the lockdowns being as harsh as they were. I don't know that Australia was a hot destination.
I know, but that was after the bulk of it. And remember, we came to Brisbane, and but we did have to go to quarantine. And let me tell you what, we were so lucky with quarantine, and we had the best time too. Our kids remember it very fondly. Very bizarre. I don't know.
Quarantine paradise is different to go to Melbourne. They wouldn't let you in Melbourne,
Yeah, I know.
That's right.
And Dan, maybe just to add to that, just so you know, my eldest is 16, so I appreciate even more, the work you're doing. So it's so fitting.
I love that.
But I don't know if you were going to ask there something, Karen, but I was going to say, so obviously what helped you navigate, or at least be gritty and stick it out during the early phases of your business, is obviously understanding that, other very successful business owners had to go through the exact same experience, or were going through the exact same experience, or that was one example, without actually knowing the author or knowing the book. But, and I guess that's exactly why we want to have these types of conversations, because that's exactly our experience, that we're all going through this stuff, but somehow we're stuck in our silos. Understanding that you weren't the only one going through that. And also maybe, knowing that, why you were doing what you were doing, and that even, if you were only going to do it for a limited period of time, understanding the positive difference you were making, obviously that fueled you. Are there any other snippets of wisdom, like insights or lessons learned or coping mechanisms that you would, share with our listeners?
Yeah, so I mentioned COVID because that was the toughest time for us. We'd had 1 or 2 years before COVID as a startup, We weren't even called MyStrengths then, but we were just sussing it out, and we were just starting to get some traction. We connected with 40 or 50 schools, and we were starting to do some good work, starting to get a little bit of income, starting to see some, this makes sense on a business side of things and a purpose side. But then COVID completely closed down, shut out of schools, and we only had one avenue, one customer: go in, deliver high school programs, do this. So suddenly we had like 18 months, nearly 2 years, where we were completely with zero income. And we brought on our first permanent staff. We had a team of about 12, and literally we lost more than half our team during that time. They went and got other jobs. They went for stability and things like that. And we ended up in about 30 grand worth of personal debt. We just, found money, pulled it out of and I'm like, what are we doing? The business was supposed to pay us. This is why we started it, so we could actually make a living and do something good. And suddenly we're taking money out of our mortgage, out of this and that, and putting it into the business, and that felt so just debilitating, frustrating. It felt like I was a failure. I felt like, and I could understand the context. That it's not that your product doesn't work, or that the system or the service that you're providing is a failure, but it's just the relentlessness of bills and of rent, and paying for this space, and then you got your permanent staff, and then the superannuation, and then the taxman still wants, even through COVID, he wants his cut, and this is the hard parts of business. People aren't saying this sort of stuff. You know, you look at Instagram and there's all, you know, people making money from being like a, I don't know, online celeb and all these kind of things. And I'm like, you know, the hard yards behind the scenes. It looks like business is easy, but it's bloody tough. And we had it really hard. And to come out of that, we had to reestablish relationships. Teachers had moved, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that we had to, you know, work really hard to reconnect just with our, but suddenly the good thing was that I think society, and it still exists now, is that realize, man, we got to do something to help our young people. And when we're out there, you know, waving really, you know, big banners, big flags saying we need to help young people, you know, get foundations that will help them into a positive future, that will help them understand who they are, that they're not broken or, you know, a mistake or whatever, but they're actually amazing, you know. And schools started to switch on to this and go, oh, we need that. And parents started to call me, and we developed through COVID. It was actually a good time. I filmed a series of parenting courses. I actually wrote 4 books actually for parents. We didn't publish them as like paper books because I thought, I wonder if they're going to read it. But to tell you what, they might watch it. And so we got in the studio, you know, we've made this place a studio and things like that. And we filmed a series of parenting courses around raising resilience, around anxiety, how to fight fair with the teenager, about, you know, how do we transition? Most parents know how to raise a 0 to 12-year-old, but man, I don't know what to do with the teenager. And how do we communicate with the teen, right? How do we, you know, there's so many fears that parents have about, you know, raising teens, about, you know, are they going to be, you know, swept away by the influences of the world, and what are they doing online, and how do I even create boundaries around that? And there's so many things that parents, you know, are stressed about. So we created some framework for parents to go, hey, here's how we can build positive foundations, connections, and relationships. And I had the space to be able to write and film and do all these kind of things. And we provide that to schools now, and make it available for the school to offer it to their parents. So the school purchases this kind of package from us, and they make it available to all their parents. And now the school looks amazing because they're providing tools, resources, help to their parents who are calling out and saying, well, we've got a course for you on that, or we've got this or that. And it's been such a great journey. We're in the process actually of developing a proper like offer to parents to help them on the strengths journey. How can I take, you know, Mikey, you see, I got a 16-year-old. How can I support her? How can I? And so we're actually creating and building that framework at the moment on how we can, you know, directly support with some training, you know, with parents. And it's such an important space, and particularly for those transitioning from childhood into those teenage years. And so, you know, that's kind of our next horizon. We often think of it as a 3-legged stool. You know, you can work individually with the student and grow their self-esteem, their confidence, their clarity, help them on all that. But then if their teachers are going, yeah, but you're a little bugger, you know, and how come you keep doing this? And what's wrong with you? And, you know, you're putting them down. Sometimes, you know, you've got schools who are on the positive end and saying, okay, well, we're going to change the way we do it. But the third leg of the stool is still, it can compromise and undermine the good work that's being done in establishing those foundations in young people. It's like the parents need help in, what do I do in this space? And so we're really passionate about making sure that 3-legged stool, you know, we can deliver things that really are helpful, you know, right across.
That's incredible, and I feel like I need to watch your videos. Hate to admit it, but please send them my way. Amazing. Can I quickly ask, did you have to put a hard stop into place? Obviously, so you're talking about this tough time, you know, where you have to withdraw some money from your personal mortgage, and it's, you know, because of COVID, and you still have all your bills, you have your full-time staff and so forth. I can't even begin to imagine what that must be like. Obviously, I just work in my, you know, as a solopreneur, so I don't have those responsibilities other than my personal bills. Did you have to put a hard stop into place? When did you know, that you could keep going? Was it a long period of time? How can I imagine this? Obviously, only as much as you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, no, total open book. To be honest, I wish I had the discipline. Something I've realized about me and my personal strengths, I'm not a great business manager. I've never done business before. I've always done charity, I've always done public speaking, always done, counselling and working in it. And suddenly I'm running a business. And it's like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. We just had a vision to help people. And now we've got to manage budgets and finances and, you know, P&Ls and all these kind of things. And I'm like, wow. So to be raw and honest, I didn't have a hard stop, but we had a limit as to how much money we could actually throw into it.
Yeah.
We kept seeing the announcements by government saying it's going to be opening up soon, or we've got another 3 weeks or something like that. And I think that little bit of hope made us go, well, the process still works. There's still a need out there. There's still a customer or a space and niche for us. And if we can get through this, then we might be able to, you know, help the business flourish. And I'm telling you, in the last 12 months, like since COVID, we've doubled every year. And this year,
Wow.
we will do more than 210 programs in high schools, you know, across 100.
Wow.
And, yeah, we've got a team of 20 of us now. We, you know, and into your question, yeah, we're expanding into Melbourne and to Brisbane. We've got a team that we're growing and developing training in Melbourne at the moment, you know, huge hub. And we are really hoping to, you know, take it to that next level. And it's exciting. It's fun.
I love that. Amazing. Very inspiring.
It's incredibly exciting, Dan. And again, a testament to the need for, you know, your work in this space, but also for the drive as well. For you and your team to create such an amazing service to people. And I just want to, if I could go back just a little bit to the previous question that was asked, and you led into this importance of having this, you know, partnership between home and school. We know that that's ever so important, and that echoing of messages. And we know this even from our own lives, that when we're hearing the same messages from people around us, that can be really supportive and nurturing. That can help give us a little bit of confidence that, you know, that is the right message that we're getting there. So I just want to highlight that as a really important point there. And I do appreciate how raw and open book you have been around this conversation. I want to give you an opportunity here to, let's just say you could take yourself back to Dan 5 years ago. You're starting out fresh, and just thinking about this idea of, you know, MyStrengths, or what's going to eventuate into MyStrengths, what would be a bit of advice that you'd give yourself as you start that journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. Have you got advice for me?
We need to hear it from you. It's like, I'm so burning to hear what you're going to say. That. No pressure.
Yeah, there's probably two main pieces that I would tell is don't sweat the small stuff. Like, I remember having not quite sleepless nights, but wrestling with, oh, you know, what are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with that? And, you know, we've got trouble with this stuff, and there's a bit of infighting there, and there's blah, blah, blah. And I think that we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders when, you know, in our own sort of spaces. And sometimes I look back and I go, oh, we got through that okay. And I think I would say, hey, you'll be okay. You're going to get through this. And that positive self-talk, that whole thing about, it's okay, this is a season, or this is tough. And I love the analogy of thinking about whitewater rafting. We use this a lot with parents, saying that raising teenagers is like whitewater rafting, you know. It's an adventure. But, you know, you go around the corner and there's some rapids, and suddenly I wasn't ready for the rapids. Why right now, you know? And suddenly it's slumpy and breathing, you're up against the, you know, a rock, and then suddenly you rushed through this part, and you're like, whoa, you know, I'm just catching my breath, and, you know,
Yeah.
and then it's smooth for a little bit, you know? Is it true?
Yeah, it rings true so far. Hope my kids aren't listening.
Yeah, like, I think the business is the same, you know? And we have these moments where it's like, oh man, you know, this is actually, you know, but I think we've got to enjoy the journey and the adventure of it, because it is an adventure. And to know that, and celebration, that was the second thing. Celebration is massive. I don't think we do it well in Australia and in our society, but we are a team of celebration every day. Like, we have celebration. This is how regular, right? Every day our team goes into high school. They have a briefing in the morning. The team get together. They, you know, high-fiving. All right, come on. This is what we're going to do. This is how the layout works. This is who we're going to, you know, help, and blah blah blah. This is our. At the end of the day, we pay them to stay for an extra half an hour. You know, you've got to finish together. No one's nicking off quickly as soon as the bell goes or whatever. No, we pack up the banners, do all this and that, and then we have a team debrief. And it's just 5 minutes, stand-up meeting. And they say, what was your highlight for the day? What's our celebration moment, you know? And everyone shares something different about, I met this girl, Sally, and she was so, like beside herself, and, like she's got a lot of pressure from her family and this and that. And then she discovered she's got the creativity, strength, and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, yeah, that's awesome, And then we find out, from this one and that one. And, and the stories that come out there, the team, all right, hands all in, yeah, go us or whatever. And to celebrate daily together those little wins. Schools can be tough. Kids can be cheeky little buggers, They can give you attitude. It can, I've had kids, walk out saying, F this, I'm not part of it. What is this stupid thing and all that. And it's like, man, you got to celebrate the wins. And so at the end of every term, we get the team together. We invite, other, if they're local or around, deputies or other school teachers. And, hey, we're going to put drinks on. We're going to go. And we're just going to laugh and have a great time together. And, our celebration, 100,000 teenagers, just getting people in a room together, having a cocktail party, just, capturing some film and saying, hey, this is what students are saying when they've discovered their strengths. This is the enlightenment, the help. This is, and really celebrating those wins, because you go back and you put your shoulder to the grind, and then it's friggin' hard work, and getting rejected, just keeping hope, saying, well, that was one rejection. We've got to get up, make another call, and go out and meet that school. And so I think those elements of, don't sweat the small stuff, celebrate your wins, look at how far you've come, and, and then just keep pushing on.
I love that. Apart from the fact that I think it's sometimes hard to know what the small stuff is in the moment, isn't it? Hindsight is a sweet thing. But I adore your story around celebrating your milestones and your wins and your successes and everything that sort of stands out and that went right. I guess, I try to do that myself just on an individual basis, and most of my coaching clients will probably, roll their eyes because they always have the homework task of keeping a success log, because I think it's so important we get that switch right in our brain, switching from constantly looking for what's wrong and what went wrong and where did I stuff up, to finally, also seeing what we actually did right and what went well and what role and part we played in that, I think is so important and life-changing. Absolutely adore all your pieces of advice and your entire story. It's so inspiring, and I know I'm taking a lot away from that. I'm pretty sure our listeners do too. If our listeners want to know more about your program, about you, connect with you, maybe have some questions, maybe want to get you into their schools or watch your videos, where can they find you, and also what's up next for you?
No, that's awesome. So everything pretty much happens through our website, mystrengths.com.au. I send out a monthly newsletter that helps parents to understand how can we build on the strengths of our children and things like that. So if you're a parent listening and you think, hey, that would really help me, or you want to even do your own MyStrengths quiz and discover your own top 5 strengths, you can get on there. Anyone can do it. It's an exciting process. It's great to do it with a coach, to have someone work it through with you and see how that shines in your life. But we do it with plenty of adults, but our focus is definitely young people. We're not going to get distracted. That's another thing, Karen, from before. The temptation to go corporate and to go chase where the bigger money is and things like that. For us, for other people, that's amazing, right? Go do that. But for us, we had to be very clear on, no, we need to keep, doing what we do well, and not try to just spread ourselves too thin or chase other markets. But that mystrengths.com.au, people, even adults, can go on and discover their strengths. What's coming out next for us is, definitely over the next 3 or 4 months, we are developing those parent training, and we're going to launch that, and it's particularly focused on a very narrow niche, parents who are transitioning from raising smaller children into those teenage years. How to transition, how do we have confidence that I've got what it takes, that I'm not just going to lose it every time they do something, that I can create boundaries around screens and phones and what that might look like. And we're going to give some really good insights into some of the developmental stages of a teenager's brain and what they can handle at different times and what's happening in their relational world, and so that you feel really well equipped and confident going into those years that, I'm not going to fail, I don't need to be anxious about this, but no, we're going to be okay. And I'll give you a framework and some training that will help you. And my goal is that every parent who has teenagers or children transitioning into the teenage years would do this course and transition with confidence and clarity. And so, yeah, they can be the best years, they can be the funnest years, and for both the kids and the parents. And this can be amazing.
I know, I want to be watching those videos.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for the work that you do in this space and will continue to do in this space. It's super exciting to see your business continue to grow as you venture out into other states. And I look forward to sort of continuing our conversations through our studies, but also seeing what's the next chapter for MyStrengths as well. I'm sure our listeners have had plenty of key takeaways here. I've got a page full of notes here that I'm going to go away, reflect on, and think a bit more deeply about my model as well. It's quite a messy set of notes at the moment, but it is more than one note. I promise you that. But thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate you joining us and taking some time out of your day with us.
Thanks for having us. You guys are awesome.
Absolute privilege meeting you. Thanks, Dan.
What an absolutely heartwarming conversation. I think Dan is one of those people that I've known for a little while now, and when I think of the intention behind his business, it's so clear. His passion is so evident. I don't know if it was just me that was feeling that from my end through that conversation, or you picking up on the same vibes there too, Mike?
Absolutely picking up on the same vibes, especially when towards the end he said, he knows exactly. He could go to corporate and chase the big dollars, but he's not doing that. He's very clear. He wants to work with adolescents. He wants to work with schools, with parents, and make a real difference there in the society where he can tell there's a big need, and he can see the amazing difference he makes. So I adore that when people are so clear on that and they have such a strong vision and mission. I love it.
Absolutely. And I think if it wasn't there, you could see through it, right? Like if this work wasn't the work that he lived and breathed, but he was still trying to sell it, like you just see through it. Now, I do want to promise our listeners, I did take more than one note. There was a bunch of notes that I took during that conversation there. There were so many great things that I picked up. And I think to go really early on in the conversation, one of the things that I loved when he was talking about this, there's such a big focus on deficits, and we don't give particularly kids a lot of opportunity to find what their passions are and what they're good at as well. And it reminded me of a piece I watched, Yong Zhao, so he's a professor out of University of Kansas. He was speaking about this only a couple of years ago, and it's always resonated with me. And he was talking about the future of education, and he said, what we need to be doing is letting kids find what they're good at and what they enjoy, and then get out of their way. I mean, I'm paraphrasing it a little bit there, but that was the essence of his messaging, let people find what they're really good at doing, what they're passionate about doing, and let's just let them do it. And I just love that. That was something that I really loved that Dan sort of spoke to quite early on.
I agree with that so much. And, when I said, there's this whole, the value society places on academic, subjects versus creative subjects and so forth, where that comes from with me personally as well is Sir Ken Robinson's big TED Talk on that topic. That is one of my absolute favorite TED Talks of all times, and I know that stuck with me forever. And I can see it in my own kids, both very smart, but also very creative. And you can tell, my eldest is at the age where, people are starting to ask him, so what are you going to do after school? And you can see the different reactions depending on what he says. Does he say something around, for example, music production, because he loves that, and he's actually studied audio engineering there for a while, but that's a very different reaction he gets there to him saying, he wants to study e-commerce and, something like international business and finance or something like that, because he also has an interest maybe in drop shipping and trying himself out in the entrepreneurial space. And it just breaks my heart. And I just think, because you can tell the impact that has on him, how he judges whether it's a good thing and a thing worthwhile pursuing, that he's planning for his own future or not. And it shouldn't be that way. As you said, it's like, get out of their way, let them find their passions and get out of their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get out of their way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think that's so important. And I think, as a society, we've got a lot of work to do in that space, because there's a lot of stigma around, you have to go through school and you have to follow this linear pathway to success in life, but it looks different for everybody. And one of the things that Yong actually does extend on in that same talk is that he sort of goes on to say that, kids will find something that they're interested in and they'll make a job of it if we let them.
Yeah.
And the same can be said for adults. I'd say that's the same for a lot of our listeners too. They've probably gone, I found a little gap here. I found something that I'm interested in and I've got a passion for it. I want to make something of it. And just as Dan's done with MyStrengths. I think it's an incredibly good way to look at things. He had this skill set in counselling and he saw this gap and he thought, I can do something a little bit more here. I'm actually quite good at these conversations. How can I expand on this a little bit more? And I really love that.
Yeah, isn't it so beautiful that he did the exact same thing? He applied it sort of to his own life. I'm good at this. Let me, dive deeper. Absolutely. And you know what? The other thing I love about the work he does is that it gives back an opportunity to children or adolescents, whatever, to have an individual lens upon themselves. What I mean by that is that across the school system, there's no room for individuals so much anymore, is there? I mean, I don't want to talk too negatively about the educational system or the school system, the way it exists at the moment. I know how important it is. I know how important it is for myself. It was for myself when I grew up. I feel so privileged and lucky to have been able to go to school regardless of, maybe the financial standing of my parents or whatever. But there is not a lot of room for looking at individuals and supporting individuals in their own strengths. And when Dan talks about the differences and those moments of insight and epiphany amongst the young kids, when they finally understand their own strength profile, what they're good at, it's such a moment of validation and perhaps for the first time ever feeling seen and being able to step in your own power. I think it's so important and so beautiful.
Yeah, and then the extension of this too, and it's interesting when we start to get into that life crafting space, right, where we start to identify the things that we're really good at and then find ways to have it happen more or have more opportunities to engage in those elements of things that we like and we enjoy and we're good at in our life. So it's some incredible work there. That strengths-based work has got such huge merit and it's just, I think, Dan sort of hit the market right with the age of students that he wanted to get this right for as well. But I think there's some great lessons in that for us as adults as well. That, we can
100%
very quickly, and Dan even mentioned it too, that negativity bias where we can very quickly gravitate towards the things that we're maybe not doing well or we need to do better in. But what are the things that we're actually doing well? And how can we leverage that and bring more of that into the space that we're doing? And I want a little shout out to you here too, Micah, like your success log. I think that's a brilliant thing to have in the coaching space, but also maybe just a reminder for our listeners too, like if you're sort of in the grind at the moment, you're wading through the mud, this is maybe a timely opportunity to just stop, reflect, pause and go, what are some things that are going well for me here? And how did I make them come about? Yeah. Can I do a bit more of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially if you work as a leader, and I think you constantly feel judged and you probably also judge yourself, especially if you're a new leader. But also if you work for yourself or you're an entrepreneur where you feel like work is never ending, and we've had those conversations in the past too, Karen, where we spoke about this, it's a never ending string of problems or challenges when you work for yourself. And I remember, in the past just sitting down thinking, I work day and night and I achieve nothing. And it's not true. I never tried to see what I was achieving. And we do have to sit down and make an effort and be proactive about seeing our successes and our wins. And literally, I dare anyone out there to grab a pen and paper and sit down and write down, even just the last month, everything, big or small, what you've achieved. It's incredible. That list will compile very quickly.
Yeah.
And it feels amazing.
Yeah, and that was a great point to pick up on that Dan mentioned too, which I really loved. I wrote that down as another one of my more than one notes. That's such an important reminder for us as well, the journey, how far we've come. And And, whilst you're not always seeing the fruits of your labour straight away, that's okay. Like a flower takes a while to bloom, doesn't it? A tree takes a while before it bears fruit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a nice little message for us.
And we know from research that if we use our strengths, to achieve our goals, not only are we more successful, we are more likely to achieve those goals, but also and we'll enjoy the journey a lot more. And once we achieve the goal, we will also feel a lot more fulfilled and happy about having achieved the goal. There's this concept in positive psychology about miswanting, right? The phenomenon that we often aim for goals that we think will make us happy and joyous, and then we get there and it feels a little bit anticlimactic. Yep. So miswanting. If we use our strengths to attain our goals, we don't have that so much. We will feel a lot more fulfilled. So I think there is so much merit in the work he does, over and beyond, the moment where you feel seen and validated and all of a sudden maybe have that self-knowledge.
Absolutely. I love that. That is a great point to mention here. And I think that for me, there was probably only one other big key takeaway that I just wanted to mention here. I mean, there's so many things I'm going to go and apply, but there was one little refresher here for me. And I just hadn't, it was just a phrase that I hadn't heard mentioned for a while, that notion of don't sweat the small stuff. And there's that beautiful book by Richard Carlson, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff. That perspective and that reframing, which we've spoken about many times before. That was a big take home for me today, in today's episode, I think.
Yeah, beautiful takeaway. I guess for me, I know that I've thought it a few times, but I've found it hard. I know how hard I can find it sometimes in the moment to identify what the small stuff is. To me, it just feels big, all of it. But, just to maybe take the time more often and frequently, to sit down and try to identify, might this be the small stuff that I'm sweating, and taking that perspective and perhaps a step away from it. And also seeing, is it really going to affect me still in a month's time? Is it going to affect me in a year's time or in 5 years' time? That might be a good way to be able to identify that too.
Absolutely. An incredibly beautiful conversation today. As I mentioned at the start of our wrap up here, what I felt was a very heartfelt one, a genuine call to action for Dan and the work that he's done with his team. And it's super exciting to see where to next for him and his journey. But for now, hopefully our listeners were able to gain a whole heap of knowledge and wisdom from Dan's insights there. I feel as though there's a whole lot more for us to gain from further conversations with him. Who knows? We might end up having another conversation down the track. But for now, that's the end of today's show. Hope everyone enjoyed.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We hope our conversation helped normalize the struggles so many of us face on the path to success. While on the outside things often look like sunshine and rainbows, this is rarely the experience for anyone behind the facade.
But instead of letting that demotivate you, we hope it does the exact opposite, to let it fuel you to keep pursuing your purpose and realize your potential. Just without the added burden of feeling inadequate, and a little more patience, some tips, and self-compassion instead. For further info, head to our website, flourishingunfiltered.com, and get in touch with us via our socials, @flourishingunfiltered.
Now, if you or someone you know is struggling with feelings of loneliness, low mental health, or suicidal thoughts, please know that there are people who care and treatments that can help. We've compiled some helplines for you in the show notes.
It's a wrap for Flourishing Unfiltered today. Please give us a follow and leave us a comment and a review. We hope you tune in next time.